This is the BMW M3 G80 Competition 510 horsepower rear-wheel drive. It took BMW 6 years to catch up with the Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio, which was mainly shuttled around on a flatbed truck. If you are still here, I promise not to make any more jokes about the Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio, which really has 510 horsepower, rear-wheel drive, and it has the best-in-class steering, probably one of the best, period. If not for the interior, which felt outdated at launch, I'd seriously consider one. If you want jokes about BMW and the beaver teeth, I made a few in my BMW 4 Series review. Feel free to check it out, link in the description. I uphold what I said there. As controversial as the new grille looks, it looks better in real life than in the pictures. That being said, it also makes the F80 seem in good taste. I know you're here for burning rubber, so let me just quickly go over what's behind that grille. That's a 3-liter straight 6. Gone is the fancy carbon brace. Instead, there are 3 bits of metal which look like they came out of a shed. 510 horsepower, 480 without the competition pack, 650 Nm, 550 without the competition pack, 0 to 100 km per hour takes just 3.9 seconds, 4.2 without the competition pack. If these numbers sound familiar, that's because the previous M3 Competition and the M3 CS offered similar performance. Has BMW stopped dead in its tracks? Well, it hasn't stopped, but it got bigger. The current 3 Series is bigger than the E39 5 Series. The new M3 is 12 cm longer than the previous gen, 2.5 cm wider, and it has 4.5 cm longer wheelbase. As a result, the G80 M3 is 170 kg heavier than the F80. So, what's the new BMW M3 Competition like to drive? It's much more driver-friendly than the F80. The last M3 Competition I drove was all about fast laps. Most of what the car had to offer was available at crazy high speeds, preferably on a track. The new M3 is still a raging bull, and a wasp is flying close to its behind, but this is not its first rodeo. The M3 lets you play a bit. In a corner, the back will dance ever so slightly, but you still feel in control. In the previous M3, as soon as you felt the rear was starting to lose grip, and that happened most of the time when you pressed the accelerator, it was unpleasantly brownish. And here, it's fun. Like in all new M cars, also here there are M buttons on the steering wheel and they are red. You can assign your favorite settings to them. I have full attack mode under 1 and a safety net under 2. If you have a track to play around on and you don't need to worry too much about the tires, you can do things like this. In the M mode settings, you can turn stability control off but adjust traction control on a scale from 0 to 10, and there is also a drift analyzer that records distance and angle and scores your drift. Brakes, this test car gets M composite brakes, and you can also get carbon ceramic brakes. In the M settings, you can adjust the brake pedal feel between comfort and sport. To be honest, I didn't feel much of a difference, but before I got this press car, it spent several days on a press launch track event, so perhaps the brakes were a bit tired. On a cold day with wet patches on the track, the main limiting factor was the tire temperature.
If you are into lap times, however, the M3 can corner like it's on rails as long as the driver is more capable than yours truly. By the way, as standard, the M3 has 18-inch rims in the front, 19s in the back. This is supposed to help steering and traction. This one has 19s in the front and 20s in the rear. That's an option, obviously.
Speaking of lap times, how quick is the M3? BMW promises 0 to 100 km/h in 3.9 seconds. It's hard to achieve that in a rear-wheel drive car. With launch control and without launch control, I got about 4.5 seconds. I could probably shave a few tenths of a second, depending on the weather and surface. Meanwhile, 80 to 120 took me just 2.2 seconds. That's mind-blowingly quick. Just be careful when overtaking, because the traction control has a lot of work.
If you want to overtake quickly, hold the left paddle and step on it, and the gearbox will automatically downshift to the lowest possible gear. Also, in manual mode, the gearbox will hold the gear without an upshift until you press the pedal.
According to the spec sheet, the xDrive M3 will do 0 to 100 km/h in 3.5 seconds. That's slightly slower than the M8 Grand Coupe Competition I reviewed last year, but I find the result more credible thanks to xDrive. Like in the M5 and the M8, also in the M3 you will be able to disengage all-wheel drive.
If you're wondering who needs an all-wheel drive M3, think about the 510 horsepower being put down through just one axle. My launch control attempts only prove how difficult it is. Also, the weather is not always ideal. Last night it was raining and snowing, and today before dawn, when I set out to the track, the temperature was around 0. So I wouldn't mind a safety net like all-wheel drive. I'm sure you'd also want to drive your M3 every day whenever you feel like it, rather than making it your garage queen.
And how's the BMW M3 to drive on public roads? It's much more comfortable and better soundproofed than the previous model. It is also better put together and there are no squeaks or rattles. I suspect that beside larger dimensions, higher mass can also be attributed to better sound deadening. I'm not saying it's quiet, but it's better than in the F80.
On the other hand, the M3 doesn't sound like much. I understand current regulations leave car makers little choice as far as the exhaust sound is concerned. It was the same in the M8, too loud to make it a comfortable long-distance cruiser and too toned down to enjoy the sound. And like in the X6M and the M8, also here you always start with sport exhaust. Now, BMW explains that you buy an M car for the sport sound, but when the sound is meh, I'd rather have a choice. Steering in the new M3 is quick, but not as quick as in the Giulia. The BMW is still a German machine where everything has to be precisely calculated. The M3 has all the driver aids, which you would expect from a modern luxury car, and that probably impacts how numb the steering can feel. The only brand that really does it well is Porsche.
Fuel consumption, if you care, should be around 10 liters per 100 kilometers in the combined WLTP cycle. I got this much extra urban. Beside the rather eye-catching upholstery color, that's optional, and sporty front seats, the M3 interior is generally similar to that in a regular 3 Series. By the way, these are not the sportiest of seats available, and this is why I find them quite comfortable. You can also get full-on bucket seats, but I'd think about those twice unless you are planning to do a lot of track time. As usual in the BMW M cars, the gear lever works differently than in regular BMW models. Drive is to the right and reverse is left and front. At least now there's a park button. In the previous M3 there was no park. You had to turn the car off in drive and then it switched into park. The manual handbrake is gone, but who needs one in a 500 plus horsepower rear-wheel drive car, right? Then there are the usual cup holders, a place for your phone, glove box, storage under the armrest, deep door bins. In terms of everyday usability, I'd say the 3 Series is better than the 5 and 8 Series cars, where there is no space for your everyday carry. In the back there is good legroom and decent headroom, the backrest splits 40-20-40, there is no armrest with cup holders though, so bottles go in the door bins. There is third zone climate control, heated side seats and 2 USB-C ports. The 480-litre boot is the same as in the regular 3 Series. This is a practical sedan which happens to be twice as powerful as a very decent 330i, a car I'd seriously consider. And, like the 330i, soon the M3 will finally be available as an estate. Or rather touring, as BMW likes to call it. My apologies to BMW fanboys for calling the touring an estate as if I were a peasant. Price of the BMW M3 started €82,500 for the rear-wheel drive manual model, add $7,000 for the competition pack with an automatic gearbox. With options, this car costs around €109,000.
The BMW M3 G80 gives you more power, but at the same time it's very user-friendly. Sure, the Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio is a better driving sports sedan, but as a complete package, the BMW M3 wins hands down. And how do you like the new BMW M3? Let me know in the comment section below.
If you like my sarcastic, down-to-earth and possibly mildly amusing car reviews, join me every Friday at 3 p.m. Central European Time, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video as it helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.